Welcome, everybody, to the Bank on Yourself Professionals Live. I am Mark Willis, Certified Financial Planner and Bank on Yourself Professional. Happy to be in the sandwich between the coolest two kids on the block. That's Amanda Neely, CFP. Also, Bank on Yourself Professional, Brandon Neely is here rocking it. So good to see you guys both.
Yeah,
Good
and
to
I
be
think
here,
we'll
Mark. Good to see you.
we're going to be hanging out with some other Bank on Yourself people next week in Detroit because we all come together. We hang out for a week to learn, grow ourselves, so we can help our clients grow as well.
Yep, it's true. It's true. Yeah, this is kind of our little. This is the exciting week of the year where all the Bank on Yourself professionals come together. So if you were curious, we do get together in a regular way, multiple times a month. But this is one time a year we get together in person, and I think it's a lot of fun. We're usually there for a couple of days, and we're going to be there next week. But we are here to cover a lot of ground with you if you're watching live today. And so there's a lot we're going to talk about today. There's been a lot going on in the financial world right now. And so I've got my notes here. I'm going to do kind of a quick overview of what we're going to be covering in our time together today. And really, I'm going to read the headlines, and then each of us brought a few of these links and articles and clips or whatever to discuss, and we're just going to talk about it. And Amanda or Julia or Brandon, whoever, if there are comments on any of these in the group listening and watching, please make sure to mention it so we can bring up their comment live and discuss it together. So we're going to do a quick zip through the topics we're going to discuss. There's been a lot going on. For example, on April 23rd, 2024, the Department of Labor released their final Fiduciary Rule, and that's going to take place if nothing changes this September, which says that the rule should, quote unquote, protect retirement investors from improper investment recommendations and harmful conflicts of interest. So we're going to talk about what that means for the oh-so average investor, as well as those that are looking not so average at their financial plans. Next, we're going to jump into how some taxes are getting hit. Americans are getting hit with 50% taxes. Are you in one of the states that are being impacted? So we're going to talk about that. Next up, the Federal Reserve's folly. We're looking at inflation of almost 20%. And we're going to talk about whether or not the government is sharing the true inflation statistics with us. And also, looking at the 40% increase in the money supply just since COVID. Next up, we're going to talk about, and this is not in the order, we might jump around a bunch, by the way, but we're going to talk about, in kind of relation to that, the U.S. is adding $1 trillion of new debt every 100 days. How long did it take to build up the first trillion versus now we're getting another trillion tacked on every 100 days? What does that mean for you? What does that mean for me? We're going to talk about that. Brandon and Amanda are bringing up the Kentucky congressman that introduced a bill recently to abolish the Federal Reserve. A lot of folks wonder, what is the Federal Reserve and why do we have it and why are we getting rid of it? So Amanda and Brandon are going to bring the heat on that. We're going to jump into CFPB highlighting the hidden cost of health savings accounts. Aren't those supposed to be perfect? I mean, I thought they were the triple tax win.
Right.
And then next up, we're jumping into consumers expecting higher short-term inflation. Well, that's interesting. So there's, usually when they expect something, it happens. So we're going to have even more inflation coming in the second half of 2024. And we might even talk about the GameStop, the AMC soaring more and more. I think, what I see, 1,000% growth, something crazy like that. 70% each, really, since the meme trader Roaring Kitty jumped back on the scenes. So we've got all that and a lot more to cover. Amanda, Brandon, glad you guys are here and excited to see what we can cover. Let's just jump right into the first topic here first. The Department of Labor. I'm going to pull up. This is from Financial Advisor magazine, because I know everyone watching this show is a regular reader of Financial Advisor magazine. No, probably not. But guess what? We're here to keep the reading out of it for you.
I do want to, as people are like, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming, I'm just going to tune out. the reason we wanted to bring this up is because we care about the people that we interact with. And some of these things, these articles, can get so overwhelming that you're like, oh, what do we do? And so we want to really build where, hey, how do you as an individual have control and feel that you have the at least some sense of a way to move forward on your own financial lives, because we can feel out of control in this in so many ways. And so I want to make sure, again, that we're not just giving you crazy information, but how do we then move this into real action?
Right on, man. Totally agree. And big shout out to Jay Helms. Thanks for the heads up and hello and everything, man. Great to have you on my podcast last week too. Yeah, man. Great stuff, Brandon. You're right. We are not here to just bemoan the problems. We're here to point to a brighter future and to say you have the ability to take action and to move earnestly toward more financial certainty and control. That's what we're here for. I do not believe in just like living life floating down the stream toward the gutter. I want to move and even swim upstream if necessary. But it means knowing what's going on. So let's jump into this first article, and then I'm going to pass the next one over to Amanda to pick one of our articles out. And feel free to rearrange those on our document, Amanda, if it helps you and me. So the first one is why all financial professionals should stop supporting and even overturning the Department of Labor's Fiduciary Rule. And this is by an article on Financial Advisor magazine by David Macchia. And he really talks, I guess what I want to say is, here's what he says. He says, I do not believe for a moment that the individuals at the Department of Labor who wrote this rule intended so many negative outcomes. My assumption is their aims are noble, but that doesn't change the fact that the fiduciary rule is unnecessary and ill-advised and likely to damage Americans' retirement security more than strengthen it. So he goes on. I'll just do a quick summary of this article, and we can put the link in the show notes if you want to, or in the notes if you want to. But what he says here is that it seems that the fee-based advisor compensation is preferred over commissions. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, it just means that most investment advisors are charging a fee on your bucket of money. If you've got a 401k or an IRA, they're going to put a fee on your balance and then take a little piece of your money out of your pocket every year while they invest it and hopefully grow it by more than their fee costs you. That's the assets under management model. It's your assets under their management. The alternative is to charge a commission. And he goes into an example here. All right. So he says this: consider the example of an insurance agent, those greedy insurance agents, receiving a 7% commission on a $100,000 IRA rollover. Okay. So we're going to fund a 10-year fixed indexed annuity with $100,000, and you're going to get a 7% greedy old commission off of that $100,000 IRA. Okay, so that means the agent would be entitled to a one-time commission of $7,000 off your $100,000 IRA, which is paid entirely by the insurer, not the purchaser. Not the purchaser. That means the contract is held to the end of the surrender charge. You're not going to pay $7,000 to Joe or Susie or Amanda or Mark or Brandon. That $7,000 is coming from the life insurance company, the annuity company instead. Over that same 10-year period, he says, and I'll wrap up with this, an investment advisor managing the same $100,000 in an account that grows by 6% a year would have to be paid $13,900. That's basically twice as much over only 10 years to be invested in the stock market where there are no guarantees. Okay, so the greedy insurance agent got paid half as much as the investment advisor does merely by putting your money into an annuity. And that's only after 10 years. Most people are going to live, 30, 50, whatever years longer. How many more fees would you like to pay your investment advisor? So, Brandon, what do you think about this, man, as you kind of look at this and see these numbers laid out in plain English?
Well, I always like to ask, for me, thinking about who wrote it and where was their lens from, right? And so oftentimes when they're targeting, and I did this video of like who you're against, and they had to have an enemy. And these life insurance agents that are trying to do an annuity that's going to help somebody have long-term income for the rest of their life. Oh, God forbid that they make money, and I think that that's a challenge of where we want to have an enemy, so they make us the enemy. But really, it's saying, okay, yeah, they should get paid for their services, us, but also in the end, how are we helping the client make sure that they're good when they're 90 or 95?
Totally. Love that. Amanda, what do you think the implications are of something like this DOL rule going into full effect if it does?
Yeah, I'm curious, Mark, could you summarize what this rule says and what it would mean for financial advisors or for insurance agents, what they'd be required to do that they're not required to do now?
Yeah, in essence, you'd be forced in many ways to act as a fiduciary for all accounts and place a greater emphasis. The fiduciary rule is going to place a greater emphasis on investments and make you fill out more paperwork and make more disclosures clear if you're doing anything other than investing. And by signing all this extra paperwork, I believe that many financial planners like you and me and others will be scared, let's say, to work with anybody who is doing a small account. Why scared? Because if you're not acting in whatever court's perception of best interest is, you could be sued. Here's the key question that I have from the DOL rule. Again, this is 2.0. The first one was from a couple years ago. What is in one's best interest? Am I always acting in my daughter's best interest? She's 8 years old. I hope so. I try to, but is best interest like in what time frame, right? Like the best interest of my daughter's diet in one afternoon might be all the ice cream she can get, but the best interest over 50 years of her life, 100 years of her life, maybe giving her some broccoli is is in her best interest. So that's
Well,
just one of 50 different ways you could view the words best interest, which are never really clearly defined.
and I think about that from best interest for our own self. I mean, what's in my best interest is to eat vegetables and do the right course diet, but I eat donuts sometimes.
Yeah.
And I do things that are against my best interest all the time. And so then you're putting even the individual, we know what's best for us. I mean, like literally, the American Heart Association has all kinds of stuff that we know we should do. However, do we actually do it? And that's
Right.
kind of a frustration on my end of saying, as I do a full financial analysis, I could have the best interest for the client. The client will still go the other direction, and we have to have all kinds of things in place. But in the end, it's like a really big challenge because they don't even know they won't even do what's in their own best interest.
Well, what's going to
End result.
happen is the small investor is going to just be without financial advice.
Mhm.
Who's going to take on the little grandma that's got 75 grand in an IRA if it might be that she sues you and takes away your whole business? No, you're going to have to only work with people with large enough retirement accounts to withstand the risk of more and more and more lawsuits. The only people who win in the DOL rule as it stands today are the attorneys. Amanda,
Yep.
your thoughts? Anything you do to improve on something like this before we jump to the next article?
Well, I guess um, I don't know all the ins and outs of this one, but I do know how much paperwork is already involved with, like, if you wanted to up an annuity, the type of paperwork that you need to do today versus if you wanted to open a brokerage account or a Roth IRA, you could do that in minutes, right? Where the annuity
Yep.
might take a lot longer. And I know that already some financial advisors or financial professionals, if they could do both, realizing the burden of the paperwork, they're going to choose the easier one. And if that easier one also gives them more asset under management fees over time, then that makes sense, right? So we've already have that system set up. My question would be, are we going to continue that system or reinforce it or make it even bigger with this rule or not?
Good. I love it. Guys, let's jump to the next one here. So I see the next on my list, and I just moved it up to have a little switcheroo, is Amanda. I want to hear all about this, abolishing the Federal Reserve. Tell me all about it, and where do I sign up?
Okay. Yeah, this is a law that was just introduced into the House. It's House Bill some number or other within the past couple weeks. I actually had a client that told me about it. I had no idea. And the abolishing the Fed has been introduced as a House bill before 1999, and then off and on until 2013. But it's been 11 years since we've had one of these bills introduced to abolish the Federal Reserve. And I think one of the articles that you're going to talk about is some of the questioning of the Federal Reserve's effectiveness and what it's doing. Its folly, I think, is what one of the headlines we're going to look at calls it. This is causing people to question whether we still need this institution and what kind of benefit it's serving. And we're also going to be looking at a press release at some point from the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, which was also in the headlines recently, along with the Fed, because of a Supreme Court case, because the CFPB is under the Fed in terms of how it gets funded. And if we get rid of one, does it get rid of all of them? It's a whole can of worms. I just wanted to make sure people knew this was part of the conversation out there.
What do you think about it, Brandon? Getting rid of the Federal Reserve?
Yeah, so I have a friend of mine that actually works for the Federal Reserve, and we talk about it all the time because he works for the Fed, not on the money side, but in the infrastructure side. And some of the conversations we have and what they actually talk about on their even running a business of the Fed is really interesting. I was like, wow, this is I don't know, some of the stuff that I'm just like, you guys are running this. The other thing that I think is important is, okay, so we abolish it. What would it be replaced with? What system would we have? And okay, yes, maybe it's not the best, but how do we move from this? And I don't know. So I don't know if we abolish it, what would it be replaced with? Like some kind of worse off situation or not? I don't know. So yes, it needs to be fixed some. I don't know about abolishing.
Okay. I totally disagree. I have nothing but scorn toward the Federal Reserve as a entity, and I'm okay. It's okay if we disagree. That's kind of what makes this show fun, right?
Yeah.
So I have yet to see what it's done in a good way for our country. I believe since the start of 1913, which is when it was founded on Jekyll Island, we've started the inflation environment that we're now suffering under in an extreme way. And back in 1913, there were actually deflationary measures coming out of the Civil War and all the way up through the beginning of World War I. Things were getting cheaper, and they actually called it the Gilded Age because it was such a productive. We've never had in one generation, like one generation or two generations, the world or this country anyway get more and more stuff. That's when we had the light bulb and the car and the plane and indoor toilets and all the stuff that makes your life kind of good. We did it all without a Federal Reserve pumping money into the system. And the more money gets pumped into the system and the more manipulation the rates are, the more wrong information business owners get. Interest rates are kind of like, I think of them like information. And if they give you wrong information, like rates are low, money is cheap, then you can invest in that doorless microwave invention or that glow-in-the-dark sunglasses invention, right? Or what else? That reduced fat tub of lard invention. The things the pointless stuff that you shouldn't be investing into, that wrong-headed investment on your real estate property down the street. If you're putting all this money because it's so cheap, why not, right? Why not take a lark on Bitcoin or whatever else? The more you dump money into farces or schemes or scams, the more trouble there's going to be when ultimately reality smacks us upside the head. So if someone can give me a good reason for the existence of the Federal Reserve that actually helps you and me, I'm listening. So far, all I can see is that it's helping the bankers, and it
Yep.
sure helps Congress because they don't have to actually raise our taxes when they just, pump more money into the system or lower the interest rates or cause inflation. Inflation, in my understanding, is an unvoted on tax. So, guys, chop me down. Where am I wrong? What am I blind to there?
I know really here, and I think Amanda will have a bunch here to say on this, but what would be the alternative is really, and I don't know what that is. And sometimes it's like, okay, we know our devil here. And that's the biggest challenge is it's not the long range. I think we need it either gone or some other system. It's the immediate. If we abolished it, would we go into civil war? Who knows what would happen? What's the politics?
Maybe banks would love to keep their grip on power.
Yeah.
And we existed just fine for 150 years as a country without a central bank. We tried it 3 times before, and they abolished it 3 times before, or 2 times before. We're still stuck with the third one, the mutation. But yeah, we go back to not having one and having local banks.
I think that's where it should be. I just think that people are not, by and large, we are sheep. We just follow, and I think that that's the challenge, and we have to figure out how do we. I have no idea. I feel like maybe I'm just as less hope in that, but I do think it needs to change or something, and whatever it's any ocracy. There should be something bigger than that.
And I just want to say, I am perfectly happy in my life. I have no interest in offing myself. So if the Federal Reserve is watching this, I want to stay alive. So, okay, Amanda, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's power is really important, and we have to be really cautious who we let have the power in any circumstance, right? Personally or on a national level or even a global level. And my biggest concern, if this went through and the Fed was abolished, is that then we're under the thumb of these huge corporations, right? If it's not the banks, it's the Meta and the Apple and the Google and whatever that end up running the show. And I don't know that that's any better.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. Yeah, there needs to be a a decoupling of major corporations and the government as well. But the Fed is the biggest corporation of them all. It's not it's a corporation. It's a private federal conglomeration mutation creature, right?
Well, as my friend who works for the Fed says, it's the biggest cartel out there. So,
well, and then so we start with the first domino, right, Amanda? We knock that one down, then we go after the next and the next. And power to the people. Okay, we better keep moving for sake of time. Let's see. Next up, let's talk about this Federal Reserve folly. So that's the next one here. This one is a Forbes article, and it just says that, hey, since 2020, the cumulative inflation rate has been 20%, which basically means it now takes $120 to buy the same groceries or whatever that $100 bought you in 2020, just a few years ago. All right. So this is now 2024 as we're recording. And said a different way, $1 is now worth only 83 cents in your pocket. And that's in 4 years, really just 3.5 years. Okay. So I'm thinking back to that Home Alone clip. Remember Home Alone? Macaulay Culkin? There's that scene where he's home alone and he goes to the grocery store. He's got $20 or something. And it shows how much groceries he bought for the $20 he had in his pocket. And he's got like 6 bags and he's like trying his best to carry it all home. And this is in the 1990s. It was not that long ago to, with $20, buy a week's worth of groceries. And now we have in 3.5 years, we've had 20% inflation. What will that mean for our kids and grandkids? That's what I want to know from, let's go to Amanda first. Amanda, what's your hot take on the Federal Reserve's folly and inflation rate of 20% in just the last 3.5 years?
Yeah, what I love about taking this multi-year perspective on it is that we've had so many different articles and news about inflation is up, inflation is cooled, inflation, like all it. But when you look at it, it's like they use the 2 words I wrote down about this article is it's lasting change.
Right.
These prices have gone up, sometimes by more, sometimes by less, but they're sticking around. They're not going to go back down. A lot of people, when they hear that inflation is cooling or inflation rates didn't increase as much as they had before, they think, oh, prices are going down, when that's far from the truth. They're going up and they're staying up. And I want to make sure everyone realizes, like, if you're hoping for inflation, like for the gallon of milk or the gallon of gas to be less expensive because inflation's starting to cool, that's not happening.
Yeah.
Brandon, what do you think about this?
Again, I see it in our cost of eggs and everything else, right? And it is going up, and we see this kind of stuff. However, I do think like one of the challenges, this is even with our 401k, we take a short amount of time and we don't look at the big picture. Our assets grew by 20%, right? Or whatever. And the average of this and that, and they cut out that day that it dropped, right? And so the problem is people are very short sighted and they don't remember what happened like 2 weeks ago. And so we'll have these articles and that, but the reality is our cost of housing, cost of everything is up. I mean, like what we could buy a house for 20 years ago versus now is like insanely crazy. You can't even, $1 million house is a 1 bedroom now, right? And I think that's, what hope are we going to have for our kids whenever our income isn't growing either? So if inflation is growing and our income is growing, then that's okay. But I worry about all of that. It's not just one number. It's all of these numbers, and we can feel it in our we know something's wrong. We all know something's wrong. If you're here, you probably know something is wrong. And we can't just take one article and be like, all right, it's all in a bigger picture.
Brandon, I really like what you said there, man. And it is a bigger picture. I feel like it's interesting that the title is called The Fed's Folly, because I've heard a lot of people say, well, it's the greedy corporations that are causing all these prices to go up. And yeah, I guess, but where are they getting I mean, they've got to buy the raw material from someone else who also had their prices go up. And it's not like corporations weren't greedy before 2020. It's not like they had altruism and self-givingness up until 2020. And then it just so happened to coincide with all this extra money printing. I think I read the other day that 40% of all money created in the world ever since the beginning of time was created in just the last few years, like the last 4 years. Yeah. That's an unbelievable statement. And now we're going to get later on to like what's happening to our debt level. And I guess the main thing that Brandon said that I thought was really smart is the best way to fight inflation is to increase the value you bring to the marketplace. So yes, you can look for rate of return in your stock or your real estate or whatever else. You can chase the inflation rate with those things, sure. But the best thing you can do to fight inflation is to add more value and get more income right away. Start a side job, ask for a raise, do what you can do to beat back inflation in your own life. If you're bringing $1 home yesterday and now it's only worth 83 cents today, and what's it going to be like in 2 years, 10 years, 30 years from now, then income is really going to be the biggest, I guess, lever we can all pull as individuals to beat back against inflation. Amanda,
I have to have a story real quick.
Yeah.
So I had a client that I was talking to, and he is a business owner with government contracts, and they were thinking of making some transitions there, and he's a little scared because when they made these deals and when some of these people proposed solutions, they used 2007 numbers and to as long as they can go, right? And so the government's like, well, no, we need to go with these numbers in 2007. And him as a business owner, even on staff and payroll alone, can't compete. And then they're going after the government contracts, right? getting businesses and saying, compete for my business, and we go after it because we need that money to run the business, and we're shortening this and hurting ourselves, business owner wise and individual wise, to compete with 2007 numbers. I'm like, it's 2024. Like, that's not even where we can be. And so it's a challenge, and we're fighting with the government, with inflation, which the government created. You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh wait, so you want your cake and eat it too? And while we need to pay and get jobs, anyway, I was like, this sucks.
Well, that's okay, because we have the number one best performing asset in the universe right now, and it's somebody the person who pointed it out to us was a little roaring kitty. So, Amanda, can you tell us why we should all be putting all of our money into what roaring kitty tells us to?
Oh, I was going to go a little bit different of a direction, but we'll get there. I promise.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right, go for it.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see. Make sure I get the right thing. And we're talking about inflation and growing our income and Federal Reserve. So this kind of all brings it together a little bit. So this is the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. They did a press release on May 13th of this year, where they released a survey of consumer expectations from April. And they're saying we expect higher short-term inflation and high price growth. And when you click on the data that I pulled it up in another field here, first I want to start with, this is like whether people think we're going to be much better off, somewhat better off, about the same, somewhat worse off 1 year from now, or much worse off. And you can see that somewhat worse off expanding dramatically 2020 and into 2022, cooling a little bit, but overall doesn't look like the best picture. And like majority of people about the same, but a growing number of people saying worse off. When we talk about inflation, if you look at inflation expectations, right, they were really high and they went lower, but then they've had a slight bump recently. But then when you look at the income side of things, like, oh, I can handle inflation if I have more income. When you look at earnings growth expectation, it's actually down at the same time. So people are expecting
let me just make sure,
years from now, inflation's going to be higher, but their income's not.
So you just answered my question, then. I'm sorry to interrupt you there, Amanda. So you just said that folks will expect higher prices but lower income.
Yeah.
And that's strange to me. So help me understand this. Okay. So thinking like an economist or thinking like a business owner, you guys are business owners. Aren't wages the same thing as prices to you?
Well, this part of it is that some people, like, there's been a lot of layoffs, particularly in the tech sector. So the probability of losing your job is still high. So some people might be worried about that. Even if overall average wages go up, that doesn't mean my wages are going up. You know, we don't like averages around here.
Right.
And then also, I thought this was pretty dramatic. This is the probability of finding a job within 3 months if I lost my job today. And this is like, here's 40%, here's 60%. This is always about half of people think, if I lost my job, I can't find a job in the next 3 months. And so there's also that kind of worry, that that expectation that impacts our psyche, impacts what we're going to do with our money, where we're going to go. And what you pointed to with Roaring Kitty and elsewhere, I wanted to pair this with a Gallup poll. So again, they're reporting with the data that they get from the people they survey. I don't know where they find the people that they survey, but these people are saying they gave them, I'm just going to go down to a chart here. Where is this chart? Here we go. Not that one.
These are incredible resources and charts, by the way, Amanda. Thank you for bringing these up.
Yeah. So this is what people believe is the best long-term investment. And they only give them 6 choices. This is super frustrating. Real estate, gold, stocks, mutual funds, savings account, CDs, bonds, cryptocurrency. For our bank on yourself friends, you'll notice one really big gaping hole here. Whole life insurance, also annuities, not here, right? Like, we need to tell Gallup they need to update their things here. But you'll notice, like, real estate is still really high, and it's what you see. I think very interesting is like stocks and stocks, mutual funds, and gold keep switching places. And now we're back to people believing stocks is the blue dotted line, that those are a better bet than gold, right? But if you go back, in the past, we had gold way up here in 2011. It's kind of fun to see it that way.
Great.
There's also a bunch of other great charts here about who owns stock. The upper income, it tends to have more than lower incomes, but everybody is like real estate, believes that would be the best, regardless of income. There's some really interesting things. They divide it by political belief here. Anyway, I'll put this link in the chat as well so people can dig into that more. Here's stock ownership. Everybody thinks everybody owns stock, but according to this, it's only 62% of the population owns stock.
So I want to derail a little bit here because I just saw this article. And this was today. And this was interesting to me in knowing that, yes, the need for, if you lose a job or income, is they just said the record number, this is today, right now, record number of 401k savers have balances over $1 million. Right. And so that sounds good, but they also use interesting language. Savers in a 401k. So if you lost your job and you put it in a 401k, well, can you access that money? And all that. This again in CNN. It rose, and I wonder if this is to offset the fear somewhere else. Is they're like, oh yeah, well, we're saving, we're doing all the things. It rose 16% from a year ago. Savings rate. I'm like, that's a 401k, so it's an investment. Anyway, just looking at this and saying, okay, are we good? And people think they're saving, but as you know, and as all of us know here, that 401k, it's not all your money. People are like, yes, it's up $1 million. It's great, but it's not all our money. So it's still a tone. I'm going to put this in there too, but literally, I think it comes with that, knowing the who's writing the articles and what are they trying to say is really what I'm a little concerned about. So I'm putting that there. If you guys want to talk about that one too, that's just something I saw today.
Yeah. Okay, Mark, Brandon and I have been talking a lot. What's your reaction to these?
Well, which one? I mean, your charts are phenomenal, Amanda. I think those really, I want to dig deeper into there was some demographic tabs there. I'd like to learn more about who said what and what their answers were. And Alan writes in there, yeah, no surprise, whole life insurance is nowhere to be found. I kind of like being under the radar in that regard. I think that's really smart. But I think there's a push against looking for the perfect investment, and then there's going to be people who jump from one to the next to the next to the next, which kind of gets us to roaring kitty a little bit. Because one day it's real estate, one day it's gold, one day it's bonds. You saw bonds were on that chart that you showed.
Yeah.
And we all thought in 2008 that real estate prices would always go up. That was a belief that we all had. My parents had that belief. Fast forward to 2020. We all thought that, 2022, excuse me. We all thought that stocks and bonds were inversely correlated, that if you had your stocks, you could protect yourself with bonds, until 2022, when both went down together as interest rates surged and as the stock market was pummeled and crashed. And I was just reading, this is in the new edition of the Rescue Your Retirement book by Pamela Yellen. And she writes, I'm just going to read this one paragraph. She says, let's take the last 5 years from 2018 to the third quarter of 2023. Fidelity Investments, the largest 401k plan provider, reports that the average 401k balance barely budged over 5 years, increasing by only $1,200. So the average 401k balance, there's that word again, Amanda, went from $106,500 to $107,700. That's an increase of $1,200 over 5 years. Yet during the same period, we had a whopping 21% inflation. So this means that the average 401k balance should be $129,000 just to break even with inflation.
Yep.
So average 401k only went up basically 1% over the last 5 years. We've all lost money again due to the ravaging impacts of this insidious monster called the Federal Reserve and its terrible weapon, inflation. So that's my bold opinion, I guess. But I'd love to dig deeper into those articles, Amanda. Any final thoughts on that chart before we jump to? Did you want to say anything more about Roaring Kitty and what's going on with GameStop and AMC?
Oh yeah, it's really what I see across that Federal Reserve and then the Gallup poll, and then if, for those that might not know, Roaring Kitty's back, GameStop, AMC, they skyrocketed on Monday. They've started falling again, but kind of this search for like high yields, this craving to speculate and gamble away, right? Like that when we feel insecure, when we feel scared about the future, uncertain, we could lose our job and not be able to find one for more than 3 months, all those things. A lot of people turn to very risky behavior to cope with that and to help themselves feel better about the risks that are real in their lives. And you know, the Not Your Average Financial Podcast, you do such a great job of helping people say, like, you don't need to solve insanity with more insanity. You don't need to solve risk with more risk. That's actually not like, but that's as much as like human desire, we kind of feel that. If we hear that alternative, that you can manage risk with more safety, that you can get through a 3-month layoff by being a responsible saver, like we need more messages like that. And I'm just not seeing it anywhere.
Yeah, it feels like you're doing so. You got to do something when the market's crashing, or you lost your job, or you're 60 years old and you had a divorce, God forbid, or something like that, or a medical emergency, and your 401k just became a 201k, and you're like, how am I going to make it? Yeah, you have to do something. But the worst thing you can do when you've got a fire in your kitchen is to grab the gasoline tank. You're doing something, but it could make the situation worse. So yes, taking more risk. Brandon, I know you talk a lot about this. You don't want to just go out and throw it on the casino floor, hoping that you win big. And I feel like a lot of people, like you said, Amanda, so well, are seeing the GameStop, the AMC. Sure, if you want to take a flyer, if you want to throw some money away, if you want to see if it makes a little money, great. But if it's money you cannot afford to lose, like you guys talk about, that's where people get really burned. I just met a lady yesterday. She received a fairly large inheritance, and she had given some of it to an annuity account that I had helped set up for her. But another large portion of that inheritance went to an investment advisor who shall remain nameless. She gave him about 150 grand or so. No, I'm sorry. She gave the investment advisor $200,000. It went up to $280,000, and now it's crashed down to $120,000. And she's 70, early 70s. This is all happening to her. And she can't afford, just to give you some details, she can't afford to lose that kind of money at this point. And I felt angry that the investment advisor did that to her. But what are you going to do? You can't save everybody. You can just say, hey, why not choose the fire extinguisher rather than the gas tank to put out your fire?
So I want to go back to the very beginning and think about that DOJ rule or whatever it was. And you know how we said the annuities.
The OJ rule? Is he coming?
Yeah. What is it?
If the glove does not fit. Okay, no. The DOL rule. Okay, that's right.
DOL rule. Yeah, there you go.
Sorry.
Is like the thinking of like, oh, those annuities, man, they are those people are going to make so much money, but yet I wonder if that other guy would have to have signed anything to make sure they didn't lose anything, or what the fees were, right?
Yeah,
and for me, I think honestly, yeah, probably not. I know self-directed IRAs and custodial and all that fun stuff that people say, oh, it's so great, but they don't have to do as much, right? I feel like, and for us, these are people. Right. Every one of us, there's a person, and we want to build a good, solid foundation, whether it's in a annuity, God forbid, or into something like life insurance or things that build the foundation. And if we get paid, we should. But I feel like we're told, risk everything, go to the Wall Street, put in the 401k, that savings vehicle that's so amazing, and not build a good foundation, right, to make sure we're good. And I think that that's the crux of our problem, is our economy doesn't know how to do it. Shoot, the Fed doesn't know how to actually prepare for their own roofing problems, let alone, and trust me, there's an inside story there, but that they want to look at the rate of return, not about how do we make sure that our foundations are good. That's what they do. And it's a problem, and we're seeing it everywhere, that we don't have a good foundation. Sorry.
Amanda, you got final word on this one, then we'll jump to the next one. What do you look like you wanted to say something there?
Oh, I just, for people that want some hope, I have some to share in a very unlikely place before we hang up today.
Let's do it. Just share it now.
Don't delay. Okay. Okay. Well, did you have another article you wanted to cover?
Oh, yeah, there's a couple. Yeah, there's a couple more if we got the time.
I don't think we'll have the time to do everything, but
okay.
Yeah, okay.
Well, so I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to show you somewhere when I'm feeling like all hope is lost. I go to, I don't know, I could be totally wrong about this, but this is one of the places I go. So this is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, their newsroom where they put out press releases. And I can see they're taking action against Western benefits for swindling student loan borrowers, real, putting money back into the pockets of real Americans. You can go up here to topics and you can look at something like credit cards and just see the action they're taking to, lower late fees or different things like that. But this is where I also found, I also love to look for scams, and this is a great place to look for scams. How are people getting scammed? How are they losing their money? And this is where I found that health savings accounts, that they just had this article letting people know of the hidden costs of health savings accounts. And that, it shares there's approximately 36 million holding more than 116 billion, which, in an economy, where $1 trillion of added debt is happening every 100 days, isn't a huge amount. But they talk about all of these fees that people are paying on these, which that 116 billion is a 500% increase in the last 10 years. That's a lot more people with health savings accounts. But there's all these junk fees in them. And depending on what you're doing in them, there can be some really low interest rates too. When people ask me, should I start a health savings account? It's really hard for them to even find what are the fees they're going to pay. Look at this one. There's a paper statement fee. I've heard, this is the rumor mill, but I've heard people paying these fees when they've never gotten a paper statement or requested one, and the company won't even print one. If they ask for one, they'll still email it to them.
Wow.
It's bananas. And this is the only people I know of that are looking for these things and actively trying to shut them down and warn people about them and raise cognizant that people are aware of them. And they almost lost their budget, and the Supreme Court defended them so that they could actually continue to operate. I don't know if this is the police we want, right? But it's at least somebody trying to do something. I don't know. Is my hope totally unfounded here?
No, I love that you shared that newsroom. I think that's really cool, Amanda. And yeah, even a police cadet is better than nothing at all when it comes to policing some of these bozos doing their worst on consumer protection. There's another great website. If you want to share this one, I don't have a way to share, so just type in web3isgoinggreat.com. Have you heard of this one? web3isgoinggreat.com. web3isgoinggreat.com. It's a newsroom, a little less hopeful than Amanda's awesome site, but it's Web3, meaning cryptocurrency and things like it, NFTs, is going great, and definitely not an enormous grift that's pouring lighter fluid on our already smoldering planet. So it goes through a timeline. You can actually pick out, you could find Sam Bankman-Fried in here. So the most recent one, apparently Gala Games suffers a $21 million hack. You scroll down a bit more and you're going to see crypto scam money launderers charged for laundering more than 73 million through Deltec. If you notice at the bottom, that little flaming number, apparently $72 billion has been scammed or hacked out of the crypto and Web3 space since it started just a few years ago. So, and we've met people, right? I guess you guys probably have a few clients, I know I do, that have lost real, actual, important money to them in stuff like this. So just something else for fun if you're bored to tears this weekend, this wonderful Memorial Day weekend.
So Sam did ask a question. I'd love your thoughts on that. Don't BOA, banking yourself policies, also have fees? So yeah, love. Do they have fees?
There is no fee. There is an insurance expense. Would you agree with that, Amanda? And what's the difference? Is that just semantics, or what's the difference there?
Yeah, there are definitely types of life insurance that have fees. So be careful. We're not talking about indexed universal life. Those have different kinds of fees. But you are paying for life insurance. One of the things I love with the types of policies that we use is that the fees are all the costs, we'll call them costs, are all disclosed up front, and they cannot be changed without your permission because it's a unilateral contract. Very different than I sign up for a health savings account or a 401k or even the overdraft fee at my bank or my late fee at my credit card. They can change them at any time without even asking my permission.
Yep.
Love it.
I think that's it's the power of the contract, reading the contract and seeing. And I know us in the costs there is a cost, but I will be able to say with a high degree of certainty, the benefit will outweigh the cost 100%.
Yeah, even guaranteed, right? Which investment can do that? Okay, we got time for probably one more, maybe two more, if you guys got the time for it. So we talked about the CFPB. That was awesome, Amanda. You slid that one in. I love it. Let's talk. You guys want to talk the debt in the country? Or you want to talk taxes in the top 5 states? Somebody shout it out.
Your choice, Mark.
All right, let's go.
Or we could let the audience choose.
Okay, let's talk about this Newsweek article. We've talked enough about the Federal Reserve. Let's talk about taxes. Taxes hit 50% for some Americans in 5 states. Okay, this is a part of the budget outline, and it says here too that capital gains rates would be at their highest ever in more than 100 years. It says the proposals, Joe Biden's proposal and the 2025 budget, would actually increase the top marginal rate on long-term capital gains and qualified dividends to 44.6%. That's larger than it's ever been. However, in some states, that rate would actually exceed beyond 50% due to the state's added capital gains tax. And those states would be California at 59%, New Jersey at 55.3%, Oregon at 54.5%, Minnesota at 54.4%, and New York at 53.4%. So this might have big impact to folks who are doing anything with crypto or real estate or stock investing. Lots of people are going to be majorly impacted by this. And now it says that it would only affect individuals with taxable income exceeding $1 million and investment income over $400,000. But I kind of view these sorts of proposals like the start of a race. The income tax only affected the top 1% when it was instituted into law, and they had to get a constitutional amendment to pass the income tax amendment to the United States Constitution. To tax our income was unconstitutional up until 1913. All right, and it only was taxing the 1%ers so they could help fund and pay for the war, the Great War, World War I. Then, of course, you guys have seen the charts that taxes, basically the income tax crept into every American's wallet. And now it's inconceivable that, 120 years ago, our great-great-grandparents would earn their income and get to keep all of it. That seems crazy now to all of us that we could earn, you make $100,000 this year, you actually have $100,000. And not 70 grand or 60. And now there are new proposals for capital gains and dividends. Guys, with minutes left, Amanda, I want to know your thoughts. Brandon, your thoughts. What do you think about this? Is this even going to pass, first of all?
Go ahead, Brandon.
I don't even know, but I do think about like a long time ago, back before we were all born, there was this whole like thing called Boston Tea Party, and we were all mad about taxes from the Queen or something. I don't know, and how I mean, I knows history more than me, but
Well,
I'm like,
we weren't mad about taxes. We were mad about taxes without representation. But
well, do
that's
we?
still a valid point, right? Like, how much are we actually being represented in these decisions being made, these changes being proposed? Like,
Yeah,
we, the
well,
people. Yeah, keep
Yeah,
going,
fair
Brandon.
point.
and
Fair
it
point.
keeps going, like the amount of taxes. I'm like, man, I wonder what these people who wouldn't drink tea and all this stuff, um what think right now, and what would have happened if they were to all of a sudden be alive right now. What would life look like, or would they have created the tax problem? I don't know. I'm a little like, we keep fighting the same war. We need to change it.
Well, and the founding fathers did have to figure out a way to fund the revolution. And they did that somewhat through borrowing from really rich people, but also through levies and polls, or tolls and stuff like that. If my history brain is working correctly.
And
Um,
tariffs, majorly, it was
yeah,
tariffs or the income tax system.
yeah.
Yeah.
The um the thing that I know, or like I think is really smart. I was talking with some people who have a family business that's been in the family for a few generations, and now the younger people don't want to run it. The older people are nearing retirement. They're done running it, and they're going to sell it. And they're kind of in a rush to sell it before these tax laws can change. And I'm not worried, like, for me, I'm not as concerned about, the person with their brokerage account making $100,000 of long-term capital gains being taxed on that. But they're rent sinking anyway. They're taking that risk. They know the risk they're taking. But it's the family business that these young people,
Mhm.
they might own a percentage of it already, or they might be expecting to inherit it. And yet, if they get charged these long-term capital gains when that business sells, there goes their family wealth.
Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? Working your entire life to build your business, you're risking your life. You're getting up at 5 a.m. every day. You're staying late. You're putting your life and your business and your family on the line. And then the IRS or government takes half of your business away from you.
Or back to my friend that's like having to run a business that's a government contract business. He still has to do 2007 numbers to compete with everybody else on inflation, and also taxes going up too. And I'm like, no wonder
Yeah.
we're all broke. Come on now.
So with our last minute, this is why we do what we do. All right. So because bank on yourself policies are outside of the current income tax scenario, you do not have the problems that we're discussing. The dividends in whole life insurance are technically a return of premium. And so they aren't qualified dividends, which is what is being proposed here. You're also not going to receive any capital gains taxes. You're also not participating in the Federal Reserve's malarkey, to coin a common phrase, because you're looking outside of the banking system to put your resources. You're building, as Brandon said so well, a contract. Is it perfect? Is it some sort of panacea? Should we call Roaring Kitty? No, it's got its own things that you got to overcome the cost of insurance. You got to be patient with your cash and capital. But for the patient person, there can be great benefits and the future can look really bright. Guys, final thoughts, comments on anything we've shared today as we wrap up?
I think we're
Well,
good to go. I know I have to run to a meeting, but here's the thing I want you guys to know. If you guys like this, put it in the comment, share. We'll do more of these kind of rants or rambles about the actual economy. I mean, we like to talk about life insurance and the bank yourself policies, but we also know, man, some of the stuff is going so fast, or you can't keep up with it, let alone sometimes us. I'm like, oh my gosh, really? This is new. And so we'd love to do more to help you. And if you like this, put a comment, let us know, and we'll do more battles, not with each other, maybe some. I mean, we did have a little back and forth on the Fed, but yeah, if there's any of that there, let us know. And also, don't forget, like, subscribe, share. We want to help more people because it's important. I mean, this is super important for you, your family, the people around us.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you, Mark, for joining us. Thanks, Brandon, for sharing your perspectives. Everybody, always remember that we're sharing opinions and ideas, particularly when things come to investing or taxes. You want to be following up with somebody that knows your specific situation to
Well
talk
said.
about how do I make some sane choices for me and for my family with the uncertainty and with the risk that I feel like I'm taking.
Woo! All right. There's so much good opportunity here, guys. Thank you for joining us for this month's Bank on Yourself Live. We'll be back next time. See you soon.
See ya.